For years, I treated the mother of my son as separate from me, fighting, arguing, building walls, building distance, and that ended up in our separation. I cannot go back and undo this, but I cannot shake off this question: what if? By the time we hit midlife, our 30s, 40s, especially 50s, we've already accumulated so many relationship scars that we see the patterns, but we don't change. We don't learn the lessons. And so we keep repeating these patterns. And what I personally want is, as my son is now entering more conscious life, he's 3.5, I want to share my discoveries with him so that he does not create and repeat these patterns. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you 3 thought experiments that help me see that separation is just a persistent illusion, the most persistent one, but still an illusion. So come with me and let me take you through these 3 thought experiments. But first, the big question: why does me feel so different from you? The answer is this: because universal consciousness needs you and me to contemplate itself. The point is, universal consciousness, source, wherever we come from, this mind at large, cannot contemplate itself unless it's other than itself. In other words, it has to become the object for a subject, so it has to create that subject. Think of it this way. Imagine a bottle with a fizzy drink, and you can see the little bubbles bubbling up towards the top. So that's what we are. You and I are individual bubbles. There is nothing to the bubble but a water. When it pops, it's just the water. So that's what we are. But for the time being, each one of us, you and me, are these bubbles. So these bubbles can contemplate the water in the bottle while they're bubbles. But when they become the water, it's the water. The subject and the object merge. Do you see this? So this is the whole reason why there is you and there is me, so that universal consciousness can contemplate itself through us. We are here to self-actualize. That is the deepest reason why we're here. But the side effect of that is this separation. Because you and I had to separate from our source, we're also separate for each other. So now that we put this in place, let's go into the first thought experiment. The first thought experiment is the deprivation chamber, and I have to credit Bernardo Kastrup for this. Here is how it works. Imagine a perfect deprivation chamber. Inside of this chamber, there are 2 distinct people. They don't sense anything, they don't feel anything. None of the 5 senses work. They don't taste, they don't smell, they don't touch, they don't feel. They can't even sense their own heartbeats or the workings of their bodies. So no perception whatsoever. Now imagine that these 2 people were just now born. So their minds have 0 content and their sense of self has not formed yet. If you're a parent, you will know that babies are born with no content of the mind and no sense of self. The formation of identity comes online over time. So imagine that these 2 people in that perfect deprivation chamber are exactly that way. So there is no content in their minds and there is no sense of individual self for either one of them. Now think about it this way. For an external observer, there are 2 people in the deprivation chamber, but for each one of them, they're not separate from each other. It's only one mind. They're not 2 separate minds, it's one mind. So they're 2 separate perspectives, but they don't know it because there is no sense of separation to tell them that they're a unique individual perspective. So from their individual perspectives, there is no individual perspective and it's only one mind. For an external observer, it's 2 minds, but they don't know that. Therefore, for them, it's only one mind. Can you see this? You have to really go through this thought experiment slowly to be able to see it. The second thought experiment, your 5-year-old self. Again, I have to credit Bernardo Kastrup and Michael Levin for helping me with this thought experiment. Right now, if I asked you, are you your 5-year-old self? You will say, yes, I am my 5-year-old self, only much bigger, much more mature, much wiser, and so on. But are you your 5-year-old self? None of your cells of your body when you were 5-year-old have survived till today. Nothing of what you were physically when you were 5 years old has lasted through today. Your entire body has been replaced. And now you may say, but Ivan, my genes are still the same. Yes, but you're not your twin brother or sister, are you? So the genes do not account for that continuation. And then you can say, but yes, my neurons are still the same. And that's why I have my same memories. True, but none of the atoms in your neurons has persisted over these years. All of the atoms in every cell of your body, including in your neurons, have changed many times over. In other words, there is nothing from your physical 5-year-old self that has survived until today. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. So where does this persistent notion of you also being your 5-year-old self come from? It's coming from a narrative, from a consistent story that develops over a storyline. That's the only thing that connects you and me to our 5-year-old selves. And now, if you can make that jump from your 5-year-old self to your present self, or vice versa, based only on a narrative, it's not a stretch of the imagination, and it's only logical that you make the same jump from you to me or to everybody else. And the only reason that you don't feel like you're me is that there is no narrative that connects us both. Can you see this? The insight is this: you feel separate from me because there is no narrative persistent over time that connects us. Just like there is a narrative persistent over time that connects you to your 5-year-old self. That's the only difference between you and me. The third thought experiment, space-time. The only reason why you are different than me is because we occupy different spots at the same time, or we occupy the same spot at different times. In other words, right now, at the same time, you're there and I'm here. Or if you were here in this chair an hour ago, I am here right now. This is time. So can you see that space and time, or space-time, keep us different from each other or separate from each other? But we know from science that space-time are emergent properties of consciousness. They are not fundamental properties of reality. Space and time completely break down at the Planck scale. Math breaks down, everything breaks down. This is not woo-woo stuff. This is science. We don't know what happens below the Planck scale, the Planck time and the Planck space. Below that, everything breaks down. What we know is that time is an emerging property. It's not a fundamental property of reality. And by extension, space-time is as well. Can you see now in this thought experiment that you being there at the same time is completely arbitrary? It's not a fundamental property of nature. So there you have it. I shared these 3 thought experiments that have helped me realize that separation is an emerging property. It's not a fundamental property of reality, just like time isn't. And I know when I'm sharing these things with you, your mind will want to resist. These thought experiments take it all the way there and it wants to snap right back just like elastic. And that's normal because we're taking the mind, the individual mind, beyond its capabilities to process reality. It just cannot process reality in this kind of way. So that's why it takes time to even conceptualize and run through these thought experiments. So give yourself plenty of time to go through them because your mind does not want to go there, and that's completely normal. Ultimately, separation isn't fundamental, it's emerging. And yes, intellectually I can see this, but in reality I still feel separate from others. That's the truth. Here's something that my co-parent, my ex-partner, shared about our son, 3.5-year-old son. She said the night before when she was with him, he was jumping on the bed and he told her, "Mama, my dream is to jump with you and Papa on the bed. That's the dream I have. I want to jump with Papa and you on the bed." And then she told me, our son is never going to have that experience. So this is the price we pay for this super persistent illusion of separation, the most persistent one. It's necessary for us to have this experience, but there is a price that we pay. And this is the price I pay. So that's where I'm at. I feel still separate from others. That's the reality. But I cannot unsee what I've already seen, that separation is not a fundamental property of reality. It's an emergent property. It's just a persistent illusion. How about you? Have you ever treated somebody you truly love as separate from you? And are you now realizing the cost of that? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Please share in the comments below. I read all comments. So now, how do we make this practical? We make this practical by trying to have the realization that when we treat somebody else as other, we're actually treating ourselves as that other across space and time. And look, it's not going to work every time. I still treat others as others most of the time. And that's why we're here, to have this separate experience. But I realize that it helps me a lot now that I have this new awareness that every time I judge somebody, I treat somebody differently, I am actually treating myself that way. And so keeping that awareness might help you as well. Here I want to take a moment to tell you about my Deeper Prime WhatsApp community. It's a free community of consciousness explorers. There's no fluff, there is no surface level spirituality there. Only people who are engaged in Western life, just normal people like you and me, contemplating life. So if you're fine with depth and with mystery, you're invited to join. The link is in the description below. Also, I make videos like this every week. If you like the questions I'm exploring, subscribe. As I close, the separation between you and me is arbitrary. It's necessary, but it's arbitrary. The me-ness and the you-ness arise as we fill up our minds with content and we create our sense of self. So the me and you are emergent. They're not fundamental. Consider this question for a moment. What if you're everybody you love? And what if you're everybody you don't?